Okay, this is a quick stop, one that's not generally on a field trip because I can't always guarantee what the tide's going to be, but today it's low tide. And what you can see, this island in the background is called Bar Island, and this sandbar that connects the main part of Bar Harbor, the town of Bar Harbor, with Bar Island is where the town got its name, Bar Harbor. So there you see a sandbar that connects the island, and today you can drive right out there, and that's one of the access paths to the houses on Bar Island, the people that live out there. So take a good look at that, and we'll come back to this island because you can see it's got a very distinctive shape. And if you look over at this island, that's Porcupine Island, and that sort of has a similar shape. And there's a really good geological reason for that. Right here you can see a group of islands that are just offshore of downtown Bar Harbor. And going back over, and on the left you can see the steep slope of Bar Island. And you come over here to Porcupine Island. It's got a distinctive asymmetrical shape, and that's related to advance of the glacial ice. As the ice came down from the north, it scraped over these resistant bodies of rock and essentially went from left to right, making a really gentle slope on the up ice side, and on the down ice, or the downstream side, they plucked the rocks out and made these really steep slopes. So what we call that in geology is roche moutonnées, and that means sheep rocks, because the people who first described them thought that the shape of the island looked like a sheep's back. Maybe you see it? I don't know, I haven't seen that many sheep. From this particular vantage point, you can get an idea of what the rocks of the Bar Harbor Formation look like. They're the ones that are in the foreground. And if you look carefully, depending on what direction you look, particularly down this way towards the water, I mean, most of it's covered with algae, but you can still actually see a fairly distinct layering that's available. So you might be asked the question, what kind of rock are these, or what kind of rock did these start out to be? And looking back this way, you get a really good idea and can actually see the layering in the rock. And you can also see some of the volcanic ash. There's a really good layer that you can see right down here in this particular spot. There's a very white layer that you can follow right across. That would represent some of the volcanic ash. This particular rock unit, the Bar Harbor Formation, is the second oldest rock unit that we're going to see on this field trip. Again, this was sedimentary rock deposited from a flowing stream in a shallow basin right offshore. It's composed mostly of silt, sand, gravel. Right here we're looking mostly at siltstone layers. And if you look that way, you definitely get the idea that there's layering in these rocks. Here's another good view where you can actually see the layers that are exposed in the Bar Harbor Formation. And the reason that we came over this way was to see this particular structure that you can see right down here. And that particular feature is a remnant. The sedimentary rocks were like built up probably to the top of that, and over time material's been eroded away, and it left that column. You can definitely see the layers in that particular unit, and that particular structure is called a sea stack. And common feature along coastlines, you can see a lot of them in Oregon at Cannon Beach. Well, also, if we are able to get there, I'll show you a sea stack that you can see that's not too far from Thunder Hole. And additionally, if the carriage paths are open, right now they're closed because it's kind of muddy. I'll try and come back so that we can actually, I'll take you up and show you a raised beach with a sea stack. And the beach is now 250 feet above where it accumulated back in the Pleistocene. And again, this is due to the rebound of material as the continental ice sheet came down, depressed the land, and then ultimately the land's been rising up. And again, looking off in the distance, you get a good idea of that Ruche Moutonnet of Porcupine Island. You see the next island down, and then the third island in the row, you see the same thing. And looking over on top of the sea stack, you get the same idea. Here's a close-up of the Bar Harbor Formation. You can see it's relatively fine-grained. It's got a lot of fractures in it, and those fractures have since filled in with some material. I'm guessing it's probably quartz. And you get an idea of what the sediment looked like. You can see my finger for scale. I would take you down closer to the water here, but I had a really bad fall here one time when the rocks were wet, and I'm not really keen to like move back down and try it and see if I can do it again. And the algae and the water on the rocks make it really slippery. But you definitely can see the layering here. And over to our right, we can see the sea stack and the island with the Ruche Moutonnet in the background. If I zoom in on this particular outcrop here, particularly on that corner, you get a really good idea of that. You can see the layering within the different thicker layers within the Bar Harbor Formation. So gives you a real good idea that these were sedimentary rocks. Here's some more of the individual bedding planes or the layers that you can see within the Bar Harbor Formation. I've just taken these so you can make sure that you get the idea that there's sedimentary rocks here, and you can see the layers here really well. Down on the beach, there's all kinds of cobbles, large gravel, and this is what we call the shingle beach. Because the siltstone here is pretty thinly layered, the rock breaks up by the waves and makes like flat plates that then get tossed around by the waves and produces what geologists call a shingle beach. Now here's a really good example of some of the oblong cobbles or shingles. Here I'm going to walk down to the beach, and hopefully I'll be able to zoom in on some of those units, some of the sediment on the beach, and what you'll see is the fact that they're typically oblong and flat, kind of platey looking, and that's where it gets the name a shingle beach. So here we go. I'm walking across the surface of the beach, and what you can see is most of them are oblong or sometimes flat. They're kind of blocky because that's the way the joining in the Bar Harbor Formation breaks up the rock when it's subjected to weathering and erosion. Out here in the summertime, you might find a cruise ship docked. Usually they don't come into shore, but they're actually out in the water between here and the islands, and then people will come in and visit Bar Harbor. Not very likely today. It's not the best day, but I've been sort of afraid that the parks might be closed because of this COVID-19 issue, and I wanted to get out here and get some pictures so it could at least keep class going. Here I'm at the dock at Bar Harbor, the pier, and here's a good view of the sandbar that connects the town of Bar Harbor to Bar Island. And as I continue around, we're going to run into a little white box or container, and in that particular box is the tide gauging station, which measures how high the water goes up and down every day and then transmits that to the U.S. Geological Survey. As you can see from the sign, it actually is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration that runs this tide measuring station, and it gives you an idea of what the different apparatus are and what they do. This is one of my favorite views in Acadia National Park. This is on the road called Schooner Head Road, and what you can see here is really steep sides on this mountain that you see in front of us. What happened here as the ice moved, glacial ice moved south, it plucked material off the sides, And if you get an opportunity to come here in the fall, maybe over fall break weekend or some other time in the fall, the Precipice Trail goes up the side of this. It's a really awesome hike. It's not open in the spring because peregrine falcons will nest on the cliffs here, and consequently they close the trails. But you can jump on here on off Park Loop Road, climb up the precipice, and you'll be up on the top and have great views of Acadia National Park. A really good example here of glacial plucking and steepening the sides in a glacial valley. This is a similar spot where I stopped the other day to talk to you about over steepening of valley walls with glaciers, and I wanted to bring you back that I'm here today with the sun out, and so you can see what a difference a couple of days makes, and really high cloud ceiling. It's a pretty amazing spot. So we're over on the west side of the beach here, and I want to take a look at the rocks. I'm not going to climb over the wet rocks, but I think we can get close enough so we should be able to get an idea what the composition is. Here's a good candidate right here. If you look at it, and here's my finger for scale, what I see in here is quartz and feldspar. The feldspar is the orangey or the pink colored material. There's also some dark material that might be biotite or hornblende. Let's see if we can find another rock to look at. There's plenty of it here. Where do you think the source of this? Oh, this is a really interesting rock here. What do you think about this one? Really different from the surrounding material. This is more typical, this rock here is more typical of what you would see on the other side of the beach, on the east end. And there's some things that you can see in here that are really different. It's kind of an interesting rock. There's lots of inclusions or xenoliths in this one. So from that we get the idea that it was an igneous rock. It formed explosively. The pieces of rock that you see in here are from the surrounding material or the country rock that the lava or magma actually moved up through. And here's another, looking at the other side, you can definitely see that there's pieces of other rock included in this lighter colored igneous rock right here. Okay, and here's the big inclusion. Here's a couple of other inclusions. This is another one here where you actually can see some of the pre-existing bedding or the layers in the rock. So I think if we look around, the majority of the material here, you should be able to come up with a name for what this rock is. I'm not going to tell you what it is because that's part of the exercise. All right, so let's take a walk down the beach now. Okay, so I picked up some of the sand from the back of the beach, and if you look at this, zoom in on it carefully, you can see that there is material in here that's not derived from the surrounding rock. There is material in here that's been formed by organisms, and some of the things that you can see should be relatively easy to figure out. There's pieces of clams in here, there's pieces of snails. The long green things are actually sea urchin spines, and that's kind of unusual. That's like my favorite thing about this beach is there must be tons of sea urchins out in the ocean here, but actually when you look at it, there's a lot of material that's produced by organisms as well as material that is produced from the weathering and erosion of rocks. I'll try and put this under the microscope when I get back at Colby and show you some of the different organisms or the pieces. There's also pieces of barnacles in here. But if we look at the regular sand, walk over here, we still see a lot of carbonate material, but in here also is the pink is the feldspar, there's gray that's quartz, there's black that's mica and hornblende, lots of different minerals that you expect from the breakdown of the kind of rock that's exposed here.